I want to talk about JobKeeper or post-JobKeeper and JobSeeker. Look, we know what's in place. It's much pared back. Obviously, Nick Cater, the government's saying we need to sort of almost figure out where businesses are at here. There is a risk, though, isn't there? Particularly for some industries, that if they really do get hammered from April, the government might have to, flick another lever or figure out more assistance. I mean, it's a watching brief, isn't it?
It is, and I think we're talking about almost two things here. We're talking about JobSeeker, which is support for people who find themselves out of work, and that's being reduced in line with the changing job market as much as anything, and job shortages, a shortage of labour. There are industries like hospitality actually crying out for labour, fruit picking. I think support for business will have to be watched considerably, because in the end that is the lifeblood of our economy, particularly small business, and if we lose that, we lose jobs.
So, James, we're going to hear a cacophony from Labor in the lead up to April 1. You can take that as a comment, but this is their big in, right? That if this transition doesn't work, for all the praise the federal government might get overall on COVID, if they're seen to be at fault in some way for a big economic shock, well, Labor's got to have prepared that political ground.
Yeah, well, that's right. Between now and the next election, economic recovery is the main game. And, of course, the other backdrop here fiscally is, the MyEFO outlined over $400 billion of deficits over the forward estimates and gross debt hitting $1 trillion. So, these economic debates are going to be front and centre. You're right, Labor's already well on to JobKeeper and it being scaled back and what replaces it. We've seen the announcement from yesterday. It's quite extensive. I think there's going to be nitpicking around, have they thought of all the right regional areas, and you saw those vested interests out today, Tom, arguing the case for why they should be included in that as well. Look, absolutely. I mean, it is the main game. It should be the main game. And this is going to be more and more about the Commonwealth's role in terms of managing COVID, because it's vaccine rolled out, but it's also return to normalcy on international travel. And that's what's impacting a lot of these SMEs in regional areas. So until we have that vaccine properly rolled out, and until we have international travel returning back to normal.
And on the vaccine, and just get to both of your thoughts finally on this, Nick. This is another risk for the government. Now, yes, we know it's a sort of a combined rollout, but what did you make today? I mean, Scott Morrison was saying, look, go back to the comments from Greg Hunt. We have gone back to them. He says the first dose will be delivered in October for everybody. We'll see the timeline on the second. And now we're getting told from Scott Morrison that was a sign that we won't have everybody by October. I mean, they've got to be careful here, don't they, around expectation management, but also, sophistry in terms of shifting timelines.
Yeah, I didn't see sophistry there, to be honest, Tom, but you're right. They do have to be very careful about not over-promising, particularly with something like the vaccine, where there are so many uncertainties in terms of distribution. But look, everything I hear is it's going well, with a few hiccups along the way. But the fact is, we're in the fortunate position here where we don't need this thing out as quickly as other countries. And as you know,
quicker the better, though. Still, though,
of course. Yeah. But supplies have been restricted from Europe because they want to use it there, and that's fair enough. I mean, if I was in Britain, I would have wanted it yesterday. But here we have that luxury, and I think it is important to do it. And more importantly, I think you will find that the public are pretty forgiving on this, knowing how hard this whole exercise is and how well the government has done it.
I guess that'll depend on, is this just a bit of a slow rollout, or will this become rolling hiccups? And again, Labor needs to be cautious here, I think, James. They can't just be seen to be whacking the vaccine rollout. Confidence is so important. But they're the opposition. They've got to point out when things aren't going all that smoothly.
Yeah, I think they've got a role to play. They've been sort of saying for a while, just be careful with the timeline here. I mean, I actually do think it's fair game. I mean, this is actually more of a Commonwealth responsibility. The Commonwealth decided to take on responsibility for that rollout. The timeline's really important, Tom, as you say, because, there's a big difference between October and, say, January, February next year when it comes to the impact on the economy and business, because there's so many Australian businesses connected to global economic activity. We do need that return back to international travel as quickly as possible. So months do matter, and that comes to the cost of the taxpayer right through to business and the consumer. So the sooner the better. And, the Commonwealth's role in responsibility for rolling out this vaccine is going to become under more and more of a microscope over the coming months.